My celebrity guest this week is a man of many voices. Gordon Brown, William Hague, John Lydon and Billy Connolly, to name just a few. He's one of the country's top impressionists, appearing regularly on Radio 4 and starring in a one-man show, Imposter Syndrome, which goes on tour early next year. When John stopped by the studio, I reminded him about the time we appeared on a certain quiz show together. John, I am so thrilled that you've joined me on my podcast because I'm a great fan of yours. I'm always very impressed by your impressions. And your career's just been amazing. And I remember we were on the Chase together, Celebrity Chase.
We were.
And you did so well because you went for the offer of 83 grand and you got back to us in the team. And we basically got the jackpot of 100 grand, didn't we?
We did.
With Tina Malone and Charlotte Jackson from Sky.
I always love it. Whenever we bump into each other, we'll always just have a little reminisce about that.
We do.
And we'll always just revisit it.
Well, I was very impressed with your general knowledge. And we won by 1 second on that.
Yeah, but it was just enough, wasn't it?
Just enough.
And it's always, the pushback questions.
Yeah.
You had a great one, the crucial one at the perfect moment, which was about a chemical element.
Ending in S.
Yes. And just like Michael Caine, you went... phosphorus.
I remember that. It was a great day. And thinking of your career now, I mean, you've been so busy on so many shows that everybody knows, but your career started quite humbly, didn't it? On hospital radio in Ormskirk?
Hospital Radio Ormskirk General.
Fantastic.
Yes, in 1986. In the September of 86. I can remember days and times. And I was 18 at the time, and a mate of mine, Pete Burgess, showed me how to work the desk, and then I began volunteering on hospital radio. Yeah.
You probably chose songs that were appropriate to health and well-being as well, did you?
Well, it was always, I was 18 at the time, and you had to do the ward rounds, you talked to the patients, and they'd always want to hear, I'd like One Day at a Time by Lena Martell, please.
Brilliant.
We wanted to play other stuff, maybe, I don't know, Black Sabbath or Motorhead or Kool and the Gang, something like that.
Yeah.
But we did. It was a mix.
Fantastic.
It was a mix.
And you're often described as being catapulted into fame after Spitting Image. What was it like being catapulted?
Catapulted,
painful.
Yes, it's Captain Peacock. Yes, it was. I remember joining Spitting Image in 1994. Times again, you see. And it was a real thrill. Steve Coogan had moved on from the programme, and it sort of left a bit of room for me and Alistair McGowan and others to kind of come in, and taking those twice weekly trips to London to take part in this show that you always watched for years. On a Sunday there was Spitting Image, the last bit of fun you could squeeze out of the weekend before Monday and college or work or whatever it was. Yeah. And to join the team was a brilliant experience and a great learning experience. First job in telly, that was Spitting Image, yeah.
And then, of course, there was Dead Ringers. And you did what, 40 different voices on that?
Yeah, something like that. If you count them all up, if you count up on Spitting Image, I used to do Kenneth Clarke, Victor Meldrew, Frank Bruno, Liam Gallagher, and if you chalk them all up, it gets into 40-odd. And then Radio 4 wanted, I think the brief was, we'd like a Spitting Image for Radio 4. And they went to Bill Durr, who had once produced Spitting Image. And so he came up with a very Radio 4-ish version. Radio 4 had never poked fun at itself before. So initially there was this amazing sense of novelty and mischief. So yes, and then it was away, and that was 25 years ago. Wow.
And there's probably nobody you can't impersonate, really.
Given enough time, you'll get there eventually.
You'll get there. I'm going to ask you about the art of it in a moment because I'm fascinated by it. But you're particularly famous for impersonating prime ministers. So you've done them all. You mentioned Kenneth Clarke. He wasn't a prime minister, but a politician. But you've famously done William Hague.
Yeah.
And that time when you got through to Tony Blair in reality and had him on the line for some time.
Yes, I remember that. I was working with Steve Penk on Capital Radio, and Steve was known for doing his comedy phone calls at about 10:30 every morning. And if he needed a guest voice, I'd join in. It was a great platform to work on. It was great to work with Steve doing that. It was a real lovely piece of experience and a good platform. And one night we were talking about what call we would do the next day. And I said, I've got this great new voice. It's, yes, William Hague. He's the leader of the Conservative Party. He's got this amazing drawl. He'd be great in a call. And Steve, who always would see the quickest line straight through would go, right, well, we must call Downing Street then. What? Are you sure? We made a few little notes of how the conversation could go. And the gag we thought would obviously be whoever was running the reception would say, oh, go away, stop wasting our time. And then a bit of comedy from an affronted William Hague. Am I not good enough to be put through? How dare you? What an outrage. But unintentionally, we'd called on a Wednesday, the day of Prime Minister's questions, where it was quite normal that the Leader of the Opposition might call the Prime Minister. So when we came through with our nonsense, there was no objection to him. We just got straight through. So yes, it was quite a shock. And then Blair mentions it at Prime Minister's questions, and then Trev MacDonald announces it at News at 10. Quite a day.
And was there a point where Tony Blair realised that?
Well, he did, you see, pretty much straight away. Because although, Tony Blair was, quite informal, just call me Tony. Hague, with his sardonic sense of humour, never went along with that and always called him Prime Minister. You could imagine him doing it like that. So when I said, hello, Tony, in that informal William Hague way, I thought Blair knew something was up. But he did play along. He did play along.
Oh, that's excellent. I mean, it got worldwide coverage, didn't it? Which is brilliant.
He said it was rather brightening his morning, but, MI5 or, Judi Dench, whoever monitors the calls, pull the plug very quickly and rather spoilt the fun, which was a shame.
But you actually do the characters better than they do their voice themselves, because it's a caricature, isn't it? So
yes.
you're emphasising certain traits in the language. But I find the whole thing fascinating. Where does that art come from?
Well, if you try to describe it, it's amazing how confusing it really is. I suppose you're looking for the things that you can exaggerate and make funny and stretch, an audio caricature.
Yeah.
So you look at certain people, and to learn the voice, you've just got to watch them over and over and over again. So it's really there on your subconscious. And you can see the person in your mind's eye. And as you speak, if the sound and the vision match, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Then it sort of goes along.
And does it come naturally to you eventually, or do you have to play it back? Do you record it and play it back and listen to yourself?
There's no doubt all of that does help. A lot of it is very natural and very instinctive. You'll know within yourself when you're kind of comfortable with it. But it really does help when you listen back to some recordings, some Dead Ringers shows, and you actually hear it in a detached way. It gives you another dimension that adds to the whole feel of it.
Yeah. I suppose most of us can do one accent. There's somebody we can impersonate if it's even as a family member.
Yeah.
But to go from one to the other so quickly, I mean, that is a real talent.
Once you've got them in your mind, it's a bit like changing gear in the back of your neck somehow. And it's, you could have Professor Brian Cox going at this gentle velocity talking about Jupiter, to Patrick Moore talking about Uranus very, very quickly indeed.
Yeah.
Or perhaps David Attenborough with these wonderfully inspiring gestures as he speaks about the planet on which we live. To Ozzy Osbourne, I like the extremes one to the other. That kind. I'm just sort of putting a bit of a final coat on Keir Starmer at the moment. To get to him, you've got to start at Ed Miliband, who is the voice that comes from deepest down in the diaphragm. Way down here. Look what I say. What I say is we'll raise that up, speed it up, and add some paint thinners. And then you get into that Starmer area. A bit turgid and a bit like that, and it's still under review, but it's downloading in.
I'm trying to work out why it's so funny, but it's hilarious. I mean, it's such an art, and I'm in awe of how you can do that, to change your voice, and as well as the mannerisms. You obviously enjoy it. It's something that is is a passion for you.
It's a sort of happy, mischievous, impudent thing to do. And when I was a lad around the dinner table at home, I'd take off the neighbours and teachers and my mum and dad's friends, and it just made everybody jolly, and laughter got going.
Absolutely.
I thought, this is nice. I'll carry on.
So do you have a favourite? I mean, do you have some favourites?
Oh gosh, yes, I suppose you do. I've always got a soft spot for Frank Bruno.
because, the great depth in there, it's a very, great depth in there. And, he's got this, when you speak with Frank, he's got this great, philosophy, about Tyson coming onto you like a harbour shark, just show no fear, just weather the storm, Yeah.
Boxers, 90s boxers, I always love. Eubank with that great sense of precision. And for those who bet on Nigel Benn is a very fierce competitor, and I must be at my greatest to withstand. Yeah.
What makes somebody difficult to impersonate? Is there a voice or an accent that is blander and more difficult?
Yeah, I suppose some of the more grey and more disposable politicians. David Cameron was always a bit, not a lot to go on, just, generic posh and a repeated hand gesture and that sort of thing. Well, there's time's gone on now. There's that little bit of maturity at the back of the voice. It's gone a little bit like that, slightly more to get hold of, that kind of thing. Keir Starmer, I'm just in the docking procedure of getting him away from Ed Miliband at the moment. So that's sort of midway through. But yes, it's just blandness. Spitting Image always solved this problem by giving a character a trait that they didn't have, but which kind of suited them. For instance, if they had, Norman Tebbit was given sort of punk leather gear and a motorbike, because it sort of somehow resonated. And John Major was there. He was the colour of blue tack. Yes, exactly. One has to be. Sometimes you have voice neighbours. John Major, the puppet, was like this. If you go too far over this way, he became Julian Clary. So you try to repair it to John Major again, but don't go this far, otherwise it goes back to Michael Caine. Phosphorus.
That's brilliant. But it's so very clever. One of my favourites that you did was Russell Crowe.
Oh, yes.
Gladiator.
Yes, exactly. Yes, the scowl. That Ridley Scott language. Quintus, feel the earth of me. What we do in life echoes in eternity. And then when I sort of let that slip and my Lancashire accent comes through, it becomes Les Dawson again. Les Dawson, yes. My dear mother-in-law, she didn't have tonsils, she had a fan belt.
Love it. So clearly you're extremely busy and in great demand, but you look fit. Do you keep healthy? What sort of routine do you have?
I think so. I used to do a lot of running, a lot of weights. I don't tend to do that quite as much these days. Long walks are the thing. I'll if I travel from London to Lancashire, I'll maybe take the train to Liverpool and take a local train and then walk for an hour and a half to get back the rest of the way.
Oh, that's good.
So I do things like that. If ever I see a bottle of green stuff in a cafe or something, I think that's probably good. So I have lots of that.
Not absinthe then.
Maybe, well, sometimes we can grant ourselves that.
Absolutely.
So I do my best. Yeah, as you get, I'm 56 now. So
Looking good on it.
Well, I don't have the same escape velocity that I used to have, in your late 20s or 30s. So now, for instance, I certainly wouldn't have chips and gravy on the way home from the pub.
No.
Certainly wouldn't do that, not at night. I certainly wouldn't just... I'd have pizzas maybe, I don't know, no more than twice a year.
Okay.
So I'm aware of all of that, because you don't get the escape velocity from it, and you've got to fine tune as you go.
Well, we're talking to a nutritional expert shortly, so that'll be very interesting to see what she has to say. But have you had any serious medical issues, operations, or anything you can talk about?
I had some. I've had some hernia operations, some inguinal hernias.
Oh yes, haven't we all?
Oh, yes, I think so. We used to have. I used to do a Saturday job at an electrical shop, and it was my job to lug the washer dryers to the front of the door.
Yes. And
I eventually got a hernia on one side with that. That was back in 1986. That was 3 days in hospital. And then I had another one on the other side in 1999. And it was interesting to note how technology and techniques had improved. By 1999, I went to a place called the British Hernia Centre, which was a done-up house somewhere off the North Circular Road. And I was in and out over lunchtime, and that was that.
Fantastic. Did they use a mesh? They called them?
Yes, I think so. I didn't look, to be honest.
No,
I didn't know what was going on. But a very learned surgeon sorted it all out.
Excellent.
I seem to get hernias. I've got a moderate hiatus hernia.
Yeah.
So I used to get quite a bit of heartburn and that kind of thing. Although now I try the intermittent fasting. So I'll have a big breakfast, a smallish lunch, and then I'll leave it for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And that's cured it. I don't, less intake, and I don't get the same
Plus no
acid.
chips and gravy on the way back from the pub. That
Yes,
probably
exactly.
contributes as well.
I might do it I might do that over lunchtime, but the later in the day, eating big before sleep, doesn't tend to agree.
That's right. Well, we ought to have our little treats every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
Did you take any medicines or supplements?
Supplements I try to take, you know, those little green pellets that look like, that look like anti-slug things.
Oh yeah. maybe they are.
Hope I'm getting the right bottle.
I always love it when patients tell me I take those little pink pills, and there's probably 100 different ones. And you think, well, what could that be?
Jelly tots, they're called.
Jelly tots, of course they are. Fantastic.
So I take a few vitamins if I just see them and think they might do me some good.
Yeah.
I take a blood pressure tablet these days. I take one every day. My blood pressure's always been quite high.
Well, I'm not surprised. The stuff that you do on stage in front of audiences must be quite stressful. How do you deal with that?
You just get along with it. You just get, as you go along and you get more experience, you're able to, I think, get a mindset on what the stress is. And it probably shows that you care about what you're doing. And if you can channel that stress to make it uplift you rather than distract you, then I think that's the way to go with it.
And of course, the walking that you do is going to help that, because exercise, will bring down your blood pressure, relaxes the blood vessels after you finish the exercise.
Oh, good.
And keep it down, most of the time when you're not exercising. So that's really important.
This is great to be here talking about health issues.
Fantastic. Well, I know you're going to be busy. I wish you even more success than you're already enjoying.
Well,
thank you so much for coming to join me. You've made me very, very amused.
It's a great pleasure. It is. It's a great pleasure. And I feel I've had a consultation for nothing.
But I also think laughter is really important. I think when people can, laugh and relax and share a joke, it's really important. I think it's very good for health, and we use it in medicine appropriately, of course, with patients. I always remember a patient coming in and saying, I've got a really bad back. What's your advice? And we had the consultation and the investigation, examination, and I said, before you go, don't lift anything heavy. And he turned around and said, how am I going to have a pee? But that relationship with a patient can start. Yes. The relationship between a family doctor and a patient that lasts forever, as long as you use the humour appropriately, and judge the person you're talking to.
Exactly.
That's the key, isn't it?
If you've got humour mixed into a situation, it can just so disempower any of the stress, any of the, the fear, that kind of anxiousness, anxiety.
Absolutely.
Humour battles against that, and Professor Sophie Scott did a very intriguing research into this that showed how we are genetically hardwired in an evolutionary way since living in caves to laugh, because it strengthens teams and it gets people working together, takes away the seriousness and just gets people just in a healthier way of being.
That's what we need, more humour. John, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Stay
much.
healthy.
And as the Brigadier, I can say thank you, Doctor.
Fabulous.